Alrighty, I'm back once again. This time I'm going to talk about the just finished semifinals between Rocks Tigers and SKT, which SKT won 3-2 in a very close series, which Rocks could have won as well. Well, I kind of predicted it would go that either way, but I thought Rocks would pull it out, but it didn't. And then H2K got absolutely dumpstered by my team of this worlds, which I predicted all the way from the start. The Samsung Galaxy won 3-0, clean sweep, and I go into the finals. I'm just going to give my thoughts right now about at least the Rocks Tigers versus SKT series. Excuse me if I'm a little tired. It's 3 a.m. in CET, so it's very it's kind of late, not very late. Um, but yeah, and to put it shortly, to make this story a little more short, I would just say that Rocks got off to a flying start with a 2-0 start as a which were coming out. They were just sorry. I have to sorry the 2-1 start. Sorry, it's my bad. SKT got off to a great game one, where they basically got into the late game. They controlled the map completely, and there were no way in freaking hell that they could control that Olaf running in, nor Duke on Trundle or Bang with arrows. It's kind of impossible with the comp they had to do anything, because you could almost say that Rock's comp were a bit lacking identity. I couldn't see how on earth they were going to do anything with that comp, because they got kind of lacking damage, to be honest, in the late game. They can't, even though you can say that they could match the damage in the late game. It's almost just Caitlyn, or for the sake of Victor, doing all the damage. While there's too much front line, there's enough mobility, but that's not the way you're going to win a team fight, and Rocks wants to win team fights. So I think this one, it's clear that they tried to match in lanes, but eventually got outscaled and couldn't do anything in team fights. But it was really close. Kind of close, sorry. Not really. Then we have Rocks winning game 2 in convincing fashion. They, for the first time, got a really good backline threat of a comp. They were the first on the international scene to pull out the MF in lane, alongside a double 80 carry lane, you could say, against the Zyra, which can do absolutely nothing in lane, as long as you can dodge with skill shots, and they can. And Blank did nothing in the early game. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, Peanut made things happen. And then you have Kuro in the mid lane, just holding his own, just falling a bit behind. But when you got a Rumble, you got 280 carries for the late game. There's not much to do. And the problem with this is that they got so much, not actual zone control, but they got so much damage. So if they can just keep pushing and pushing, they will eventually get vision control, which was a theme with this 80 carry pick, alongside with a strong early game jungler. Then you can basically set it up completely where SKT had to run in, and Blank got multiple times absolutely crushed when he ran in to that comp. You can't do anything if you run into him, even though they lack CC quite a lot. But I don't like I didn't like Duke. Uh, sorry, it's my bad. I didn't like the way Blank played in this series, and it was very evident when they changed him and changed up the style that it worked much more fluently for them. Then in game 3, Rocks won as well. Same, completely same comp. Oh, sorry, not completely same comp. 4 or 5 pieces are the same. They didn't have the mobility from the Karma this time, but they have the Victor, which just this team is over the top with the damage. And now they even got zone control. They lack mobility a bit, but for no reason. I can't even see why on earth you would go for. I can maybe understand that you would kind of not go for the Kennen, but it's so damn obvious. Get some backline threat, and I like. It's not. I don't got a particular problem with Faker being on Oriana, but it lacks early game, and the Olaf is not doing anything against this comp. So even though you would think if they could survive, no, they can't. They get dumpstered in lanes, and Peanut is running wild. Meanwhile, Blank can't do anything because the lanes are so far behind, because none of them are winning. They can't contest anything, and when they want to run in, they just get destroyed. And even though I like Echo, I would prefer Kennen. I don't understand why you don't want to run him. He's much better in lane. He can do much more in team fights where you have to contest this backline. You have to make them step. It's like a quarterback who's sitting in the pocket. You have to make him move. You can't make Prey go wild or Gorilla because there's so much threat on this team. You need to do something to tilt the balance. Then we got the game 4. This time they switched it up completely. Brought in Benji, and he went on Nidalee, much more friendly towards the early game. And I really enjoyed watching him going to town and being able to contest the early game. And Peanut couldn't do as much as he wanted because he didn't have the sufficient ward control. He couldn't just run in, stampede on the lanes. And I really enjoyed watching Faker on Cillian. And basically, this was more or less protect the AD carry comp, with Bang going absolutely wild, even though it was just as much just a poke comp which you couldn't engage on. And I have to say, Prey played pathetic in this game. He was really bad in this match. Missed a lot of arrows. And there was basically no way that Ashe is going to work when you have Faker and that pick. You can't do that much because you can't catch them out as much as they could in the other matches with Cillian. It's a great counter pick, good in lane. Kuruk isn't going to carry any game anytime soon, and the bot lane went much more smooth because they were not. They could actually contest this lane, even though I thought that Gorilla and Prey had some chances, but they lost the early game, and Smap couldn't do much with Rumble because basically you can't catch this comp. There's no way you're going to catch it, and they got so much zone and so much range. As long as they don't get initiated on from multiple angles or they don't overextend, there's no way in hell you're going to catch them or go to a back line. That's the problem with this one. Then game 5, a deciding one, actually okay convincingly from SKT in 42 minutes. This time, I think Rocks kind of dropped the ball in the draft, for me at least. I don't like even though you could like Jace, I'm not feeling it. This draft was too narrow a win condition. It was so focused on winning the lanes, and if they didn't do that, they would get outscaled. They would get absolutely hammered in the late game. And what are you going to do? You got Fager. He's like he. There was no way that they could make this. And you got to attribute that to great drafting by SKT, but you can't make Jin work against an Army nor a Ash or a Duke running wild. There's no way you could set it up, and they don't have any damage on this team unless you snowball the early game. And they didn't. They simply didn't, because for once SKT had an early game with Benji on Lee Sin, and Duke played really, really well on Poppy, which is also quite alright in lane. And Smap couldn't do anything, and Peanut couldn't do anything. And when they were lost, the game was lost, because our three parts can't do anything. It needed to snowball in the top lane. It was so obvious. So it's pretty obvious where you want to go. And Wolf did a good job on roaming top as well. They were so keen in on stopping that top lane snowball. So great series, really fun one to watch. Now I'm going to go over the 3-0 sweep from Samsung Galaxy. I actually enjoyed the draft of the game one, where Core JJ pulled off the MF, Ruler, Ash, and so on, and Victor and Ambition on Italy. Great draft, maybe except the top lane, the Covey on Echo. I actually really found it like I felt like it was a winning draft for H2K. They did everything right. The bot lane were doing good. Jankos was amazing all the way through this series. Ruamne on Cannon, which did really well and could harass the lanes. So basically, where this fell apart was in the mid lane, and that is the theme of this series. Rio completely dropped the ball, and he looked nowhere near any kind of level, any kind of reasonable level of competition. He couldn't match this level, and you can say all you want, but Crown is an amazing player, and I truly believe he can match or outmatch Faker as well. He's very good, and Ambition ran absolutely crazy and went absolutely crazy in this series as well. But game one, H2K had all the chances in the world to do something. I think they were a little slow on pulling it off, but once they did, they could win any team fight they wanted. But Samsung made an excellent choice of just keep spreading it out, thinning it out. So even though they knew they could get flanked, they used the split push intelligently, making H2K think twice about trying to do something. And as long as they had the proper vision control, which you almost always have when you have a Nidalee and a snowballing mid lane, you have this proper vision control, then you can't do much. I think they had some chances, but H2K's vision control wasn't good enough. They couldn't get it quite deep enough with the wards, and basically it just dragged out, and eventually they got not outscaled, but Koei made H2K make a bad play at the Baron. Game two, kind of the same deal. This time now it was completely different. My bad. Sorry. This time it was much more lane heavy, where basically Jankos did his job on Lee Sin. He was amazing once again, Ambition went crazy in the early game, and Jace got completely unstoppable. He was unstoppable along with Crown, and once again it was just the Yankees couldn't keep track of Ambition, and they set it up so excellently in the early game, where he basically just took mid to top and timed it wonderfully. And along, it was the same in the last game as well, which there's no reason to mention that game either. It was just snowball out of control. This game did as well, but I think HTK, they couldn't do anything bot lane. They kept getting shoved in, and it was only when Samsung overextended that they had a chance. I can't. Rio didn't. They didn't use. That's the greatest flaw of this draft. They didn't use Rio's rise at all. His ultimate wasn't used. They didn't have enough backline threat with their comp. It was too scaly, and Odoane couldn't do much on Rumble. For me, you gotta when they pick Jace, you have to have something that can match it. And when you first, when you're picking blind Rise, it's not going to go well against Crown. I think they should have saved that for the last pick. You could argue that Forgiven should have more champions in his champion pool, but it is what it is. But I think Jankos played too much to all the other lanes when he should have supported his mid lane. You can always say that, but he did amazing with the ganking, but ultimately his mid lane fell completely down the drain. Now I'm going to try preview a final and make a prediction. I'm going to be bold and say Samsung are going to win. Let me just think. 3-2 Samsung or 3-1. I believe that Ambition can absolutely demolish the jungle. And I think Crown can win the mid lane. The big question for me is that the top lane and the bot lane are the questions that remains lingering here are that can Bang play? Can you find something to stop the MF lane? And who are the better? I think Ruler is really underrated alongside Core JJ. So if Ambition can keep up the pressure and get the vision control, and I don't think that SKT got much of a chance if they don't have the vision. And I'm just going to be bold. I'm thinking that Duke hasn't showed much this Worlds, and Smap Cuvey he's just as good as him. So if they can, if it really depends on the lanes. So I'm thinking that these lanes are going to be either extremely scaly from either team, or they're going to be so centered around the early game. Either of those two. So either you want to make your lane scale, there's a lot of good picks for that, or you want to contest all the way through the early game. And I think this is for both teams. I'm just saying. I think Galaxy can absolutely win the early game against SKT. In my mind, they can match SKT all the way through a series. They got the mid to late game alongside with the early game, and not many teams can do that. The teams can do that along with solid drafting and amazing early game pressure on all lanes, and being able to diverse your playstyle, to be able to split push and don't get caught out that much. And when you do, you have something constructed to do. And I believe that SKT, for me, they haven't shown anything with snowballing the lanes. making ganks happen. So for me, they should focus on keeping track of ambition, because the greatest chance of limiting Samsung is keeping track of ambition. I would focus heavily on which champions he will get, and then foremost, I, I would do anything to get vision of him as early as possible. Try to get a good champion, as a champion that can roam in, play to a strong side, make a bot lane that is great, that is pushing, and just keep track of one side, and then play safe in the others. Have a scaling top or something, at least something that won't, even though it might die once or twice, it's not useless. And just keep having at least one lane or two lanes going even for SKT, and keep track of ambition, because eventually, at least in my opinion, I think SKT are going to have a chance, and they have had that all through all the games in this championship, have had a chance to do something in each game, and they can absolutely do it as well. Wouldn't surprise me to see at least one more cheesy pick coming up in this next draft. That has to be something. I would say that, even though people might hate me for saying a Nocturne could work, something that can go by, something that can just run straight to the backline, or rise with some backline threat, whatever it could be. It could be a Lissandra, it could be a Hecarim, even though he's nerfed. Anything which can get to backline and just wreak havoc on the double AD carry comps. Something with some early game as well. I haven't looked up the champions, but I would imagine they could figure something good out with that. I'm sorry for not being that prepared about making the champions, but I hope you enjoyed this video and want to check out others on my channel.